And don't pull a Freddie Young and blow it in your tie. Brother Freddie does not care. I've seen that man take his tie and just blow his nose right into the bottom of it. You say, would he really do that? Yeah, he'll probably do it next time he's out here. He absolutely will. But what a blessing. All right, well, let's take our Bible to two places tonight. I told my wife not to put any verses up on the screen to get started with, but you can turn to Matthew 5 and 1 Corinthians 15. Matthew 5, 1 Corinthians 15. I'm going to piggyback off of this morning, but I'm not going to complete the message from this morning. So we're going to continue with a thought that is directly related to marriage, but it is only related to marriage in that there are two people involved in marriage. And so this will help everybody in every single one of our lives. We have to deal with this. And we're going to look at tonight, the message itself is titled Conflict and Communication. But I'm going to give you the conflict side of it very quickly at the beginning and then get to the communication only. You should be in Matthew 5 and 1 Corinthians 15. Matthew 5 and 1 Corinthians 15. So while you're turning there, and forgive me for not reading the scriptures first, but I'm doing this on purpose because I want to get to a specific place. And that is, as we have said in the last few weeks with offenses, let me tell you that you will have conflict in your life. You will face conflict whether you want to or not. And in just the same way, it doesn't matter if right now you're in the, betrothal stage and you could never see a time in your history where you and your spouse could ever have a disagreement. Mark it down, it's coming. You and everyone that you ever meet, there will come across a point in time where there is a conflict. Now, I will remind you that Proverbs 13, verse number 10 says, only by pride cometh contention. Do you understand that our conflicts, even in our home, are brought on by pride? Yours, mine, and ours. Yours, mine, and ours. And so we need to understand that is a true thing. Now, common sources of conflict, and again, I'm just going to try to give you this without spending any time here. In a marriage, oftentimes the common sources of conflict are finances, the physical relationship, family, meaning your children or your in-laws. Somebody say amen right there. Your in-laws or your children. You realize some of the biggest disagreements in a home are how you're going to raise your kids? You realize that you don't know what the other one thinks about that unless you communicate it? Well, I just figured has led to more problems. And the last one is, and just in a way of introduction, is forgiveness. One of the biggest sources of conflict in a marriage is forgiveness. Now, two reasons why we have conflict are often, number one, our experiences, and number two, our expectations. So in 2 Samuel 6, and we're not going to turn here, but it's the passage where Michal, the daughter of Saul, comes out and has problem with how David is dancing right before the Lord, and he's worshiping God in a manner, now watch this, that was different than her daddy did. And so her experiences produced a conflict in the home. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that she didn't have reason. She went through a lot. She had experienced a difficult, dark history. Let me just tell you. So her dad treated her as a pawn to get to David. Used her as a pawn. How many of you girls would just love that? Think about it now. I mean, put yourself into this scenario. And then she stood against her dad for David. Now, isn't that true love? So how was her love rewarded? Well, while David was on the run, he married a couple other women. And then her dad, because of her love for David, gave her to somebody else. And while she's married to somebody else, and and this man genuinely seems to love her, David then wants her back. And so now, what it would appear to be that David had wanted her back as something of a prize. He rips her from the man that loves her. You understand the conflicts that would arise just from that scenario in her experience? And so while her bitterness seemingly was warranted, here's the problem, is that it left her isolated and alone. The Bible says she was barren. She wasn't able to have children the rest of her life. She was isolated and alone because she she never got past those experiences. And it created a conflict that God himself actually, and you can go look it up, 2 Samuel 6, 1 Chronicles 15, you can look it up on your own time and you can study that out. She winds up where God says, because of that conflict she had with David. I mean, look, right? You ever looked at your spouse like she did? What is Oh, all of a sudden we're a little bit quieter, aren't we? Because that's what despising a husband looks like. Not honoring him the way he deserves. That's what the word despise means. You say, well, I've never said I hate him. You've looked down on him with disgust. That's despising. And that's what she did. And God intervened. And that conflict was there because of her experiences. Another reason why conflicts are there in the home is because of expectation. Now, if you've ever sat down with us in premarital counseling, you'll know that the biggest problems in a marriage are unmet expectations. It is one of the quickest sources of conflict in the home is unmet expectations. When you thought it was going to be this way, but it turns out it was another way, it produces conflict in the home. For example, ladies, you had this wild notion, I don't know where y'all got it from, but that a guy was actually going to put laundry in a hamper, not beside a hamper. I don't know where you gathered that information from, but how many of you ladies are honest enough to say, yeah, I had that expectation? How many of you it wasn't? Exactly. Now, here's the funny thing. My wife and I dealt with this. We dealt with this in a big way. And it was a constant source of frustration and conflict. Every time she'd come in and she'd see that there were clothes beside the hamper and not in the hamper, here's what she's doing, right? You can relate. What does he think I'm his maid? Why wouldn't he just put it in the right? Oh, y'all, I would never do that, right? Some of y'all, it's a cup beside the sink instead of in the sink, right? Like you all have it. And one day, actually, I think it was when I was teaching this down in Texas, I had never communicated about this. I'm here teaching on communication, and we learned this, right, on the fly. I'm teaching about this down in Texas a couple years back, and here's what I said. I said, "But ladies, you don't understand. Guys, when they wear clothes, but they're not dirty enough for the hamper, but not clean enough to go back in the dresser, have to have a place to put them." How many of you guys understand what I just said? Just as many as the women who said, "Why don't you just throw them in the hamper?" Well, they're not dirty enough, and we're trying to spare you from washing them. Now look, you can dismiss that, but that's a true statement, and I know it is because every guy in here was like, "Yes, yes, I didn't ask any of them. I know it to be so." But you know what happened? As soon as that was communicated, my wife's response was different to it. She went, "Oh, like, it's not just he's out to get me." I may not agree with the reasoning, but there was actually a reason for it. And that changed things just in the perspective. And you understand that that knowledge, that understanding of one another was never there without the communication? So here's what I've tried to do. I've tried to be better. Here's what I've tried. I've tried very hard. I'm not great at it still. There's times when they stick around too long. I'll admit it. But I've tried very hard to not let the clothes go in the pile, the not dirty enough to go in the dirty, but not clean enough to go in the dresser. I've tried to not let them stay there too long because that was the hang up, right? If you're going to use it tomorrow, whatever, no big deal. But if it's 2 to 3 days, all of a sudden that pile gets bigger, doesn't it? Come on now, I'm preaching at home. You understand? I know what it looks like. I'm trying to help us. I really am. Because if once we started communicating that, and she shared, when you do that, it makes me feel like you treat me like a servant and not a wife. Well, that wasn't my heart. I don't want her to ever feel like that I'm somehow demeaning her. And when she understood that I had, and all it took was communication to avoid the conflict. That's what it took. And so here's what you'll find about conflict. Oftentimes, conflicts can be avoided by communication. Oftentimes, conflicts can be avoided by communication. When they cannot be avoided, those conflicts that are unable to be avoided must be overcome by communication. You can avoid a lot of conflict at home if you just communicate. You ever put something on your schedule and your wife put something on her schedule, neither one of you tell the other, and then go, well, that doesn't work for me. I have this thing. And then you blame the other one because you didn't communicate either. Well, I put this on there because you didn't tell me. Well, when were you going to tell me? See how easy this could have been avoided? Boy, it's easy to be avoided if we just communicate. But those things that cannot be avoided must be overcome by communication. Now, let me show you the verses here. Conflict and communication. We're halfway done with the message. Isn't that a blessing? Let's move on to the communication. Matthew chapter 5, look at verse 37 with me. This is one of the uh, basic principles of communication. Matthew 5:37 says, but let your communication be yea, yea, nay, nay. For whatsoever is more than these cometh of evil. Now, a simple draw from this verse that I want you to see is simply this. You need to say what you mean and mean what you say. Here is communication. Communication is saying what you mean and then hearing only what is said. You ever said something to someone and then them go, well, I heard you say this. And you're like, I didn't say that. Why? Because communication is on both the speaker and the hearer. And it is only say what you mean. Now, that doesn't mean this. Honey, what's wrong? Nothing. Is something wrong? Come on, talk to me. Yes. Was something said that there was something wrong? No. You know what that is? That is nay, yea. He didn't say let your communication be nay, yea. Like say no when you mean yes. He didn't say yea when it means nay. Let your communication be yea, yea, nay, nay. When it's no, say no. When it's yes, say yes. Now, guys, here's what that also means. Do you like this outfit? No. How could you? Why would you lie to your spouse? You know what it means? Now, you don't have to be a jerk about it. Do you like this? I think that's the most hideous thing I've ever seen. Easy, dude. Like, you don't have to do that. But what that'll do is when the next time you tell her she looks good, she'll believe it. Because you're teaching her not to believe you when you don't say what you mean. Now, how many of you, honey, do you like my outfit? I do. No, you don't. I'm changing. Do I look good in this? Yes, you do. No, I don't. I'm going to change. You know what? You weren't even interested in what they were saying. That's not communication. Because communication is only saying what you mean. You ever said something you mean? Come on. You ever been in the heat of the moment, in an argument, and Say something you didn't really mean. It's not communication. Communication is only saying what you mean and then only hearing what is actually said. Are you okay with this? Yes. Then that's all I have to operate on. If you're not okay, say something. Look, we'll go this route for okay? How you doing? I'm good. Well, how come the preacher didn't check on me? Because you said you were good. How did I know you weren't good? I'm not playing the yay nay game. You understand? It's not a guessing game. And one of the gifts of the Spirit isn't reading your mind. I don't know how to read your mind. I can't even read my wife's. You understand that what we have to do is communicate only what you need and only hear what is actually said? What do you think? I like it. You hate it. When did I say that? Well, you don't love my mom. What are you talking about? Well, you've never liked her. Like, where'd that come from? All I said was, I love your mom. No, I know better. No, no, no. You're not listening to what's actually said. You understand how easily communication breaks down? Me, you actually hear what is said. So then look at 1 Corinthians 15, look at verse 33. 1 Corinthians 15, look at verse 33. Be not deceived. Must mean there's a lie coming, right? Must mean that there's something that we would normally think that is a lie that he's trying to warn us about. Notice, evil communications corrupt good manners. Can I just tell you how you communicate with your spouse determines how you live with your spouse? How you communicate with people determines how you operate with people. Evil communications corrupt good manners. You realize you might have the intention of, okay, honey, does this outfit look good? I don't want to answer that. I don't want to hurt her feelings, right? Wouldn't that be the reason why you just tell a little white lie? You know what the problem is if there's no trust in a marriage, there's no trust in a relationship, it's devastating, isn't it? Hey, don't get tricked into thinking that how you talk to one another doesn't matter. Well, we're just a bunch of sarcastic. Yep, and you better be careful with how you communicate. Why? Because it'll produce conflict. Evil communications corrupt good manners. Wrong communication will cause conflict in your home about something you said. You ever had conflict in a relationship, on the job, in the church, because of something you said? Hey, don't get it twisted. Evil communications corrupt good manners. All right, so let me come to Ecclesiastes 3. And while you're going to Ecclesiastes 3, let me tell you, Ephesians 4 would tell you, let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth. You understand that? Or to let none of it come out. That matters. Ecclesiastes chapter 3. I give you some things on communication here. The first thing I want to point out about communication is communicate the right time. Communicate the right time. Look at Ecclesiastes chapter 3, look at verse 1. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. Skip down to verse 7. A time to rend and a time to sow. Miss Martha, say amen. It's her life verse right there. Now notice the end of it, a time to keep silence and to, you understand, number one, communicate the right time. Now, what happens is typically this, um, if you have been watching toddlers all day and the grade level of your communication has been infant and you've been stuck on, I don't even know what kids are watching nowadays, Bluey, Peppa Pig, I don't know what y'all are watching. Sesame Street, right? You're watching any of that stuff. You understand uh, when you when that's all you've been around all day long, and your spouse walks in, you go, finally, an adult. It's easy. How many of you know what I'm talking about? Hey, so you know what happens? We get this. What he just walked in the door. Blah. I've been wanting to talk to somebody for 12 hours now. And you know what? He's been at work all day, and guys have a maximum amount of conversation that they have in them in a day. And so he's approaching that threshold. And as soon as he entered in, he's like, I need to just, but you walk in and you go, boom, 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 boom. And it's like, and you'll get nothing, right? You get the, or you might even get a harsh response. So he should. But communication, just when they walk in the door is not the right time to unload on someone. Okay? It's not it. When your spouse just gets through balancing the checkbook is not a good time to talk about a big purchase. Look, I'm trying to help you. I mean, you just spent hours trying to fix your family's finances, and then they're like, "How do we spend 10 grand on a boat?" You don't, right? That's what you want to do, right? Hey, you think there's enough in there to buy a second gun or a 12th gun I mean, all of them are lost in a boating accident. A replacement gun, that's why you need the boat. That's right. We need a new boat and a gun. What? You are inflicting emotional stress on your spouse because of the timing with which you're timing. Honey, what about this? And they're knee deep in elbow or in grease, and you go, "Oh, I'll talk in a minute. Like, we don't have to talk right now. I'll come back." Yeah, I don't know if, right now is a great time. Don't walk in a room yelling. Hey, you might say, well, it's a surprise technique. Yeah, and it's a bad one. Why are we doing it? Whoa, what happened? Hey, listen, the wrong time. Deal with current issues. Deal with current issues. Come with me to Proverbs 16, verse 27. I'm trying to work through this quickly. You understand? If you're always communicating at the wrong time, you will pretty soon have people that just don't even want to be around you. You're right in the middle of a very somber funeral, probably not the right time to tell a joke. The right timing matters. You understand? I've been in funerals, not the right time to tell a joke. Gone to the fellowship after a funeral, and had nothing but laugh with tears and joy, and I mean, right time for the joke. Same people, same day, same thing that's being the brought together, but just the timing matters. So deal with current issues. Look at Proverbs 16, verse 27. An ungodly man diggeth up evil. Are you constantly bringing up or digging up the thing that happened some time ago? Well, 20 years ago, an ungodly man diggeth up evil. If you're constantly bringing up things from the past, that's not the time to deal with it. Hey, look, um, when your kid leaves the door open on the refrigerator, deal with the door open on the refrigerator, not the 8 things you wanted to get onto them last week about that they didn't do, but you didn't communicate at the right time. Don't you find that you can build up, and then, yeah, well, you've done this, and this is just another example of, and it's the wrong time. Not only, we say, if it's truly forgiven, it will not be used against them later. You understand? A previous mistake is not a weapon for you to utilize in your home. Now, not only communicate the right time, communicate the right place. Communicate the right place. Do not argue in public. Proverbs 17, look at verse 19. He that loveth transgression, he loveth transgression that loveth strife. I'm sorry, verse 9. That makes more sense. Go back to verse 9. He that covereth a transgression seeketh love. He that repeateth the matter separateth very. One of the things you have to learn in a relationship is you shouldn't air dirty laundry. When you get together with your friends, one of the common mistakes of early marriage is share or to reveal information about your spouse. How many of you understand you have to learn that lesson sometimes the hard way? Why? Wrong place for that communication. Sometimes it's all right to just not say anything in public. When you get home, you can communicate. Why? Because it was, I'm going to disagree with you in front of everybody. But you might have to take them aside later and say, hey, when this happened, and have the conversation. Parents, sometimes with your kids too, the right place to get onto them. In the world in which we live, you better be careful what you're getting onto your kids about in public. Doesn't mean you shouldn't, but you need to have some wisdom about your communication. Kids, just throw this out there. There's not a good place for you to verbally disagree with your parents in public. If you try to get a gotcha on your parents, you deserve every lashing you get, tongue and otherwise. Amen. How dare you? Is that clear enough? Hey, but let's have some wisdom about our communication. There's the right place to communicate, the right time, the right place. So when in a situation with your spouse, don't tell others. Here's typically how this looks. Either one of you get married. The first thing you do when you have a big conflict is you're going to call and tell your mama. Mom, he said, hey, that's foolish on your part for 2 reasons. All right? Number 1, you're supposed to leave her, leave to him. Number 2, ladies, Well, my mom's my best friend. I've heard this over and over again. But listen, don't be surprised when your mother despises your husband when all you're doing is telling her all the bad stuff he's ever done. No wonder she doesn't like him. Hey, that's not his fault. That's yours. It's your fault. Just go run. You ever share details of your marriage with a friend? First of all, that's not wise. Do it. Don't do it. But then here's what'll happen. You won't even see it. The next time your friend sees your husband, they'll, well, how come my friend and my two best friends, my husband and my friend, don't get along? Well, that's your fault. This is just practical to know. If there's a good rule just in general, keep conversations between present parties. Keep conversations between. What do you mean? Well, me and Brother Austin have a conversation. I shouldn't go run and tell Brother Gill. Oh, Brother Gill, did you hear what Brother Austin? Let me tell you what. No, no, no. That's a busybody. That's a talebearer. That produces problems. All right. Not only communicate the right time, the right place, communicate the right way. Come with me to Matthew chapter 6. Matthew chapter 6. Look at verse 7. But when ye pray, use not vain repetitions as the heathen do, for they think that they shall be heard for their much speaking. A lot of times we think that we shall be heard for our much speaking. Now you may not put it in these words, but this is the principle that most of us operate on. If I speak loud enough, long enough, or last, I won at communication. You ever been there? I just have to get the last word in. That's not how you win at communication. No, yeah, it is. I have to get the final say. No, that's not how you win. Well, if I'm going to tell you a piece, I need to get off my chest everything I need to say. So if I can say loud enough and long enough, so if you start talking, I'll just shout over you. Loud enough, long enough, or last is somehow good communication. No, that's terrible. Come to Ephesians chapter 4. Ephesians chapter 4. We've already hit this. So I'm just going to mention this and move forward. Within the communication the right way, let me give you a couple of things to consider. The first is found in Ephesians 4, verse 15. But speaking the truth in love. But speaking the truth in love. I understand the context that this is in. But can I tell you that you need to speak truth, but you need to do it in love? How do we communicate the right way? Well, we speak truth. And we dealt with this. Communication is only saying what you mean, only hearing only what is actually said. When we speak truth, we should do it in love. Now, they won't know if you don't tell them. Your spouse and nobody else in the world, they're not mind readers. They're not mind readers. Now, if there's something you don't like about your spouse or about their behavior, tell them. Tell them. Tell them love. Tell them. You would be surprised at how quickly we our spouse actually chose to be with us, which means they actually have an interest in you. And we lose that concept very quickly, don't we? Look at Philippians chapter 4. Philippians chapter 4. Speaking the truth in love. They won't know if you don't tell them. If it's something, there's something you like, communicate it. But then here, if Philippians chapter 4, look at verse 8. This is key. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are good report, any virtue, think on these things, those things which you both learned, received, heard, and seen me do. God of peace be with you. Deal in facts, not feelings. Deal in facts, not feelings. What do you mean? Well, a lot of times we think something is some way based on how we feel, but oftentimes it is not that way. And we need to deal in facts, not feelings. All right, let me explain. I feel like you don't love me. I love you. All right, now which one are you going to operate on? Yeah, but I don't feel like it. Okay, so you can keep operating on that, and there's nothing I can do to change that. You realize that? So if you're gonna operate on the feeling, it'll never change. It can't have nothing to do with how you feel. You can feel some kind of way regardless of what I feel. But if we're going to operate on facts, you understand there's times when you're dealing with your spouse where you get the feeling that they're out to get you, but the truth is they're not. One of the things about charity, and we'll get there eventually, is that it thinketh no evil. Charity thinketh no evil. So finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, honest, just. Like, you understand? That's how our mindset's supposed to be. We're supposed to operate in the realm of fact. In fact, allowing our feelings to dictate how we operate is very destructive. Because your feelings are very fickle. So stick to what is true. If you're unsure, ask. If you're unsure, ask. Don't assume how you feel. Sometimes communication is this. You say something, and it feels very, boy, you're coming at me. So you need to ask, what do you mean by that? Are you saying? Sometimes you're not listening correctly, right? You're not hearing only what is said. So you can ask, are you saying? And then and you know what they might say? No, not at all. Oh, I was listening wrong. And you'll find that the miscommunication was on your end, not theirs. But you got all up in arms because of how it made you feel. It wasn't their fault in speaking truth. It was your fault in hearing it. So if you're unsure, ask. Don't just assume based on how you're feeling what they meant. Oh, so-and-so said this to me at church. They must not like me. Why? Because you were having a bad day? Now they're out to get you? They're probably at home right now praying for you. What do you mean they're out to get you? And yet you understand how easy it is to get sidetracked and discouraged, and the devil create an edge in between people? All right, let me hurry. Go to James 1. James 1. Not only do you need to be speak truth. Number 2, be swift to hear, or be a good listener. James chapter 1, verse 19. Wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be You there? James 1:19. Wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. Be a good listener. Let me just make a couple of statements about this so we can move forward. Difference between hearing and listening. There's a difference between hearing and listening. How many times have you ever been in a conversation with your spouse or been in a conversation with someone else and they were just talking away and all of a sudden you realized, I don't know what they were saying. You know, the joke is, my wife the other day said, "You're not listening to a word I said." And I thought, oh, good way to start a conversation. This one's key. To be a good listener, listen, write this down, consider this one. Sometimes we don't listen, we just plan what we're going to say next. They say something and we stop listening because all we're doing is formulating that, ha ha, I got you now in our head. We're not even listening. If both of you are just speaking at each other, there's no communication because communication requires speaking what you mean, hearing what's said. So give full attention. Give full attention. Do us good to become good listeners. He that hears speaketh oft. Isn't that what the Bible says? Be aware of body language. Realize that you communicate through more than just your words. Hey, you may have never spoken to your spouse that they're an idiot, but you've probably communicated it to them. Well, I've never told you that. No, you did. You just weren't aware of how many times you went. And it speaks, doesn't it? It matters. It matters. If your kids were listening to you talk, how many of you think they'd be real interested? No, but that we do that, and then we do this at the back door. Good message, preacher. You understand the difference in communication there? Well, one of those two things can't be true. Same thing in your marriage, in your home. All right, number 3, silence isn't bad. Silence is bad. Proverbs 29:11 says, "A fool uttereth all his mind, but a wise man keepeth it in till afterwards." Hey, we ought to be swift to hear. Notice the verse, slow to speak, slow to wrath. You ever try to speed up your spouse to speak? Silence isn't, especially if it's keeping from saying the wrong thing. But we're not interested, oftentimes, in the midst of an argument, in our spouse reacting correctly. We're interested in our own way. Aren't you going to say something? I need a minute. Okay. Proverbs 17, you know, that he that hath knowledge spareth his words, even a fool when he holdeth his peace is counted wise. You know these verses. So someone said, silence may occasionally be misunderstood, but never misquoted. Silence may occasionally be misunderstood, but never misquoted. You understand? Some people are just looking to try to twist your words. That's not communication. What do you tell them? The best thing to do is just stay quiet. All right, Proverbs 18. Come back to Proverbs. Don't monopolize the conversation. conclusions. Proverbs 18, look verse 13. He that answereth a matter before he heareth it, it is folly and shame unto him. Verse 15, the heart of the prudent getteth knowledge, and the ear of the wise. Instead of worrying about being heard, you should worry about understanding and hearing what they're saying. Because the ear of the wise, we just assume we already know, don't we? Don't interrupt. Slow down and think before you speak. Proverbs 29, verse 20. Seest thou a man that's hasty in his words? There's more hope of a fool than of him. On the other side of that is be patient with those who can't spit it out quickly. Be patient. Just don't say everything you're thinking. You just might regret it. Proverbs 10, in the multitude of words there wanteth not sin, but he that refraineth his lips is wise. You understand there's times we're talking, my wife will say, no, I'm not going to say that. You know what my immediate reaction is? What? What are you going to say? Isn't that a little like you get defensive, right? Oh, what do you mean? What do your brain starts wandering, right? Here's what you have to remember. That's wise. It doesn't need to be said. No. Okay, I believe you. You understand that takes conscious effort. You never have to apologize for words you don't say. Don't make threats. Hey, in marriage, listen, divorce is not an option. Don't say it. Don't even bring it up. It's not an option. There are people, you try to leverage that in a marriage, it's destructive. Don't make threats. Home. Lastly, on this, communicate the right way, speaking truth, swift to hear, silence is bad. This one, Ephesians 4:32, be kind one to another. Be kind. Somebody said if you're unkind, you're the wrong kind. We're here in Proverbs 15, look at verse 1. I also said again, if you're unkind, you're the wrong kind. Proverbs 15, verse 1. A soft answer turneth away, but grievous words stir up anger. Soft answer. So avoid sharp or abrasive words. Avoid sharp or abrasive words. The purpose of communication is not to inflict pain. Back to Proverbs 12, look, verse 18. We're going to stop right here. I have a whole other page of this if you want it. I'm not going to give it to you tonight. I don't know if I ever will. Aren't you glad I didn't spend time on conflict? Just kidding. Look at Proverbs 12, look at verse 18. There is that speaketh. Well, look back up to verse 17. Let me just show you this too. He that speaketh truth showeth forth righteousness. A false witness, deceit. There is that speaketh like the piercings of a sword, but the tongue of the wise is what? Health. You understand that when you and your spouse, really anybody that you communicate with, when you and your spouse communicate, they ought to have been helped by your communication, not hurt by it. Let your speech be always with grace, seasoned with right. Understand? We're supposed to be helped. We're supposed to let our speech be used, edifying. building up one another. It's not supposed to be used to tear each other down. So don't use sharp or abrasive words. Uh, in the home, avoid things like this. Well, if you were a real man, don't. You're so childish. Oh, boo-hoo, cry me a river. I could go on, but you get. Let me share this with you. Can you give me a minute to finish my thought? It will go so much further than shut up. You understand the difference? Why? Because a soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. They stir up. So be kind. Communicate the right time, the right place, the right way. We're going to stop here tonight, stand to our feet.